This is the Talisker Storm. The Talisker distillery is on the Isle of Skye, which is off the west coast of Scotland. And there are like 4 main whisky producing regions in Scotland. There's the Highland, there's the Lowlands, there's Speyside, and then there's the Islands. And there's 3 main distilleries on the islands. I can't remember one of them for the life of me, but the other 2 are the Talisker distillery and the Lagavulin distillery. And it's actually, my wife and I have just become recent, perhaps a bit late because the show is now finished, devotees of parks and recreation. And one of the characters who's kind of become a bit of a hero of mine, Ron Swanson, is an advocate of the Lagavulin 16-year-old. And it was just recently I tasted Lagavulin for the first time, and it surprised me. I wasn't expecting what the experience, shall we say. The islands, the different areas produce whiskies of different characteristics. There's, the light and fruity, the delicate ones, the peaty ones. The islands produce a very powerful whisky that you really need to become accustomed to. My first sip of Lagavulin felt like I was drinking TCP, the antiseptic mouthwash, but it was because of the rich peppery iodine notes that it has, and you have to develop a taste for it. So my wife actually got me a bottle of the Talisker Storm for my birthday, and given that that is now actually the last of the bottle, it would appear that I have somewhat developed a taste for the powerful emotional whiskies that you get from the islands. It's also one of the latest trend in whiskies, in that it's no age specification single malt. Normally it would be a 12 or a 16 or whatever. There's no age specification with this. Why they do that I don't know, but it's no less delicious for it. There's nobody there. Just the dog doing his guard duty stuff there. It's been a while since I've made a video, hasn't it, my dears, gentle people? I think I actually even said that in the last video. I really have to up my game and start churning these things out a little bit more frequently, I suppose. But then again, it depends on what I'm doing at the time. And life had just kind of gotten in the way the last little while. But as you can see, the Corsair is in a stage of completion. In fact, it has actually been like this for 3 or 4 weeks. But as I say, various things have been happening in my life. And also, I've been having trouble photographing it. Satisfactorily, that is. My photo setup is actually aimed towards smaller subjects, 1/48 scale or less, really, and at that 1/48 fighters, as opposed to, I've got a 1/48 Revell Marauder in there, which I'd probably have trouble photographing as well. But this is the first 1/32 large scale, and by large scale I mean I've done the 2 quadrant. Well, I'm almost finished the other quadrant, which were 1/32, but they were actually quite small planes anyway, to the extent that they were about this, in fact, smaller than the 1/48 P47. But I did the Spitfire upon return to the hobby, and then I did the Big Edward 109, but I did that when I was back in the wee cupboard in the bedroom before I moved into the palatial surroundings that you see surrounding me. And this, as I say, this is the first one, so it was difficult getting a good photograph of it. Nothing to do with the camera. It's all my shortcomings. I mean, I'm now using a Nikon D800, which is a 36.6 megapixel full frame censored DSLR. So it's got nothing to do with equipment. It's entirely me, and to the extent the room, because you want to get the lights, the surrounding lights, at a reasonable distance away from the kit. And I just haven't been able to do that here or even in the house, which is also very small. Excuses, but and the reason I was wanting to try and get a specific type of angle and lighting and whatnot is the way that I've actually weathered this kit. I did do pre-shading on it, but I'm not an advocate, as you know, of pre-shading. I prefer to do everything post, where you have a little bit more control over it. And I do tend to like to use the pigments as well to fade the paint. But I've kind of gone for an overall scoured look as opposed to a chipped and grimy and dirty look. In the Pacific Theatre there was a lot of sun bleaching the paints, and a lot of sand, scouring, so I've kind of gone for that look. But also, which means that there's a lot of variation in surface reflectivity as opposed to colour. But one of the things that, and it was one of these wonderful little happy accidents that you stumble across every now and again, I'd done a little bit too much wear and tear on one of the gun bay covers. Well, the areas that would be a gun bay cover, you don't get separate gun bays on this one. And I went to touch it up by using the, just the paint. Now, the initial coat of paint that I'd laid down was the navy blue, but lightened with a few drops of white, just to give it that faded, slightly sun-bleached appearance. And when I went to touch it up, I just used the paint straight from the pot, which is obviously slightly darker, and being Mr. Aqueous Hobby Colour, the Goons paints, it was a semi-gloss. Most of them are either gloss or semi-gloss. Very few of these paints are flat. So the result was that in the centre of this panel I had this little darker area of shinier paint. And the result was that it kind of took on a bulged look. Now, I've always been trying to figure out how to, when I was going to be doing it on that Hellcat, whenever I ever get around to it, and that is the stress skin effect, which if you see a photograph of one of these aircrafts, if they're heavily riveted, it's like the Alps almost, with all the bumps and lumps. And I know Airfix have done an admirable job on their 124th Typhoon, which is moulded into the surface. But by producing this little sort of dark area in the centre of a lighter panel, I ended up actually going around the entire airframe on every single discernible panel, because there are many, because they're all represented on this kit, which is one of its amazing attributes, as it were. Doing this little psh, 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 psh. And the overall effect is that it looks like stress skin. But I've been having trouble photographing that, because the camera, when I say the camera, the person operating the camera, I was getting a very flat look to it. That's actually why it's sitting the way it is on the diorama. It's pointing away from the viewer, as opposed to normally I would have my aircraft pointing towards the viewer. And the reason for that is so that when you look at it, the light will reflect off the wing surface and you'll be able to see all these variations. It's on the side of the fuselage as well. And if you're in the area in the next couple of weeks, well, in 2 weeks from the date of this video that is, it's the Scottish National Model Show, the ScotNats in Perth, at the Dewar Centre in Perth. It's this big 2-day event that we have. It's kind of like the Scottish version of Scale Model World. And this year we're actually having 2 halls, and combined that's probably going to put us, in terms of floor area, about the equivalent of one of the halls at Telford. So it's going to, I don't know how we're going to fill it. I know our club table has, we've got a large area to fill this year, so obviously I'll be taking this. Now, I know what I said a long time ago, and I'm still 99% against it, but there is a new trophy this year, and it's the Pacific Theatre. So I'd considered putting this in, but I just, it's a pain in the arse getting a trophy, to be honest, because you've got to get it engraved, and you've got to pay for that, and then you've got to get it sent back to them before next year, and it's like, more trouble than it's worth. So, as I say, this will probably stay on the table, but if you're in the area, you could pop in and you'll see. I'm not saying that that's a reason to go, because I mean it's quite a good show. There's a lot of traders as well, so this will probably stay on the table. As you know, I've added the Edward cowling flap actuator set, which you can hardly see. This is also one of the reasons it's facing away, so you can see it. And I did the Edward super fabric seatbelt. Seems like it should be in the song. Super fabric. No, it doesn't. And also the cowling flap set came with these little engine covers, which is handy because I wanted to show the engine exposed, but sitting in a diorama with a pilot. I also did the pilot, and I'm quite happy with the pilot. I actually got him to look vaguely human this time, and 1/32 scale is a wee bit easier as well because it's a bit bigger. And yeah, he's standing there, he's putting his gloves on. So I've entitled the diorama "Waiting for the Crew Chief" to fit the cover so that you can fly away and kill Japanese people. But to enhance the diorama, I got a photo etch set of PSP, perforated steel planking, the Marsden matting, which was an absolute nightmare. Absolute 100% nightmare. Photo etch frets, now you know what the mats are like. They've got these little lugs where they all link into one another to create the temporary surface. each lug was where it connected to the photo etch fret. So there's what, 50 odd down one side, like 100 connecting points on each plank, and there was like 28 planks. Oh my God, my wrists, I was getting repetitive strain injury just cutting these things off. And then you have to bend them, and they do actually link like the real thing. But that was even more of a nightmare, because it was like trying to work with magnets or Velcro or double-sided sticky tape. As soon as something touched, it linked, no matter where it was. It was ugh. So I ended up cutting all the lugs off and just plonking them down and putting them in as if they were connected. And it's worked quite effectively. There was a few left. In fact, I got my money's worth. That's all that's left. Very little. The intention was to actually have it come down underneath the aircraft, but I mean it was 15 quid for one of these sets, so I thought £30 just for, no, ain't going to happen. I had a couple of resin oil drums and got some gravel, and yeah, I'm quite happy. I was actually going to try and do a palm tree to sort of sit here, but yeah. But there we go. That's it done. I will be still. It's an ongoing thing, that the photography thing. I'll try and get some good photographs of it, and maybe plop them in a video in the future. But there it is as it stands, and yeah, I would recommend this kit for beginners, even though it's a 1/32 scale. I don't know how many hundreds of parts it's got. I mean, the smallest part in a 1/32 scale kit is probably is no smaller than, say, the tail wheel on a 1/72 aircraft, or an antenna mast or control stick or whatever. So, you know, anyone and everyone could build this, and the fit is, I could sit here for, as I say, 10 minutes until I'm blue in the face saying how good this kit is. Painting it and finishing it, if you're a beginner, might be a bit of a daunting task, because there's a lot of surface area there, and if you're not confident with an airbrush, I'm not sure what one of these would look like brush painted, unless you're an expert brush painter. But if you're quite happy with an airbrush, yeah, definitely recommend this kit to anyone and everyone. It was a wonderful experience, to say the least. And look, propeller spins around as well. So there we go. Yeah, so as I say, I'll need to try and get some more videos out to you guys. I've been a bit, well, as I say, not lapsed of late, isn't it? I couldn't be bothered. It just, I've been building this for the last 3 months. The cauldron's almost done. I shouldn't really be picking it up with my bare hands because of the delicateness of the finish. But it's sprayed, it's weathered. I've weathered the underside. I'm just putting on the undercarriage. So that'll be done soon. And I've also done the little P40 for the club group build. So I'll do videos for them shortly. But for the moment, I say cheers, slange, bottoms up, appropriately enough, and happy Easter, I suppose, or Ishtar, or whatever you want to call it. I say happy Walking Dead Day, but that's just me. That's good stuff. Toodaloo the new.